Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris back again, this time taking a trip to France, to Mars, and beyond with Gojira's third album, From Mars to Sirius. Chris, my friend, before we talk all things Gojira, how are you?
You know, as the song once said, I thought we were never going to get to France, but here we are. So
nice, well played. I feel like it's been a while. We recorded the last episode a bit early, and we're back on track. This is coming out as December rolls forward, and we get towards the end of the year when we cover our best of 2024, which I'm looking forward to immensely. But as we kind of wrap up and turn the page on this year, so much seems to be coming out in terms of new albums and new singles for 2025. It's rather unbelievable. Before I talk about a couple of singles this week that I listened to, I know you saw a concert, and I'd love to hear all about that because I have not connected with you on that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I went to see with our good friend and Patreon member Josh. He brought his son, and the three of us saw the video game cover bands Bit Brigade and Super Guitar Bros. The Super Guitar Bros started the show, and they played 45 minutes of just two of them playing acoustic guitar, like really technically impressive stuff. Like it wasn't just like two dudes strumming, like it was like really complicated guitar work, and they really did a hell of a job. And one of the cool things about it was that they, if you're in attendance, they actually just, because they're plugged into their computer, they just record their entire set. And then if you scan the QR code at their merch table, they will send you a copy of the entire show. So I got a copy of the entire show, which is really cool. Honestly, I would have been happy to see them play even longer than 45 minutes, but it was a really nice warm up for Bit Brigade, who are really just kind of like a power metal band that plays video game music while a speedrunner plays the video game, and they play the music in sync with the guy who's playing, which is really impressive because at one point during F-Zero, the dude flew his race car right off the track and exploded, and so the band had to stop and then start the song over again.
That's funny. I was going to ask what happened, because as good as that guy probably was, it's hard to keep that in sync.
Yeah, he was also playing on expert difficulty, which if you've ever played F-Zero, it's very difficult. So it was a very impressive thing. That was like his one major flub for the whole run. So I think that what they did was that they programmed a ROM of F-Zero so that it would be like 7 stages, because there's usually only 5 stages, I believe, in each Grand Prix. So they programmed it so that they could play 7 stages that each have different music. And then they did Super Mario World, which was funny because every time they like finished a stage, the band had to kind of just wrap up the song they were playing and then play like the end of stage theme, and then go back to playing like the map screen music. And being that like Super Mario World has like probably like 5 main themes. There's like the like, normal overworld, the athletic overworld, swimming, castle, there's not like a ton. So what they did was, after a while, they just started busting out songs from other Mario games, that would have fit like map. If they were on the map screen, they would play map music from Mario 3 or Yoshi's Island. There was some stuff from Super Mario Land. I think I recognized some stuff from like Mario Paint.
Wow.
Dr. Mario, like they really just like dug through the archives of Mario songs, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Great talented bunch of dudes, and believe it or not, one of the guys in Bit Brigade is also in the band Paladin, who we've seen at Prog Power. Because I believe they're both bands are out of Georgia. So that was Taylor Washington, who also is now part of Theocracy as well.
Huh.
So just covering all the great Atlanta or Georgia-based power metal bands and video game cover bands. So busy dude. He was also he also played live for Shadow Strike at one point. So dude keeps busy, but it was good. And I didn't even realize. So I for anybody who's into game music, I would absolutely recommend you check out either of these bands, because it was like two very different styles between the two, but it was, a lot of fun. The Super Guitar Bros played like battle music from Final Fantasy games and intro songs from Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger, and the theme song from the X-Men animated series. So it was cool, and they had like really fun personalities, and I got to chat with both of those guys at their merch table. They're super nice. So a lot of fun. I highly recommend both.
Nice. It sounds like a fun show. I am myself. I'm going to a concert tonight. I've got tickets. Thanks to Pat Celsus, one of our Patreon members. I'm going to see Manowar tonight. So that will be sure to bring tinnitus in my ears tomorrow. But other than that, I look forward to seeing them. A couple of singles that I just want to mention before we get into Gojira. You had sent me the new Art Nation single, Thunderball. I had no idea that this came out, but they are consistently getting really good. I feel like their last album was a bit heavier than some of their earlier stuff, and this was kind of in the same vein. Just a really, really top-notch frontiers band that seems to be coming into their own. I hope that this really kind of catapults them. The vocals are just beyond good. What did you think of this? I know you sent it to me. I have to assume you liked it.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the dude's name. I'm gonna have to look it up. But the singer for both Art Nation and Crown.
Yeah,
I love his vocals are so good. Alexander Strandell is his name, and I know we've mentioned him before. I think because we both had Crown ranked so highly on our year-end episode earlier this year for 2023, and I believe didn't Art Nation have an album last year as well?
Busy guy.
That we had, yeah. So I enjoyed it a lot. I just always look forward to when either of these bands release anything, just because I enjoy his vocals so much, and the music is just so catchy. Frontiers, perfect band for Frontiers. So I'm trying to fill out my final playlist of 2024. And that'll include, there's new singles from Dynasty and Elven King, but I haven't heard either of them yet, but they'll be on there, as well as this Art Nation single. So, just kind of a little bit of a wrap up for the year playlist before I really start to dig into the rankings for the year, which I need to shore up a bit. So I don't know that I listen to much else as far as new albums go. I've been kind of making my way through the what's left of my 2020. Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, I kind of have, since we last talked. I listened to the Nuvola finally. I know that you were curious about my thoughts on that. I liked it a lot. I look forward to giving that another listen. I listened to the new Veonity album, which I thought was like what people wished Hammerfall sounded like, or still sounded like. It was like, I got a lot of Hammerfall vibes from this, but like a fresh version of Hammerfall. I could probably go through the list of all these albums, but I'm going to be mentioning probably a handful of them anyway in the year-end episode, so I won't bother. But definitely just catching up on stuff. I've kind of let some of the prog stuff linger, like Frost and Devin Townsend and stuff. I need to definitely give those a listen. And I also kind of want to go through Glenn Harveston's list and just see if there's anything that is worth checking out that I might have missed. But I don't really think I have too much else left on the calendar that's being released in December that I feel strongly about listening to. Maybe other than the Athena 19 album, which I just keep delaying listening to because they keep delaying the release date for it. So I'll listen to it as I believe it's supposed to come out next week. So I'll probably listen to it closer to its actual release date. But we've had a promo copy of it for quite a while now. I just haven't gotten a chance to get to it yet.
Yeah, and we're starting to get the promos for 2025, as crazy as that sounds. But two
I just put my first 2025 album into my iTunes, so I'm like, oh my god, already. Never stops.
It does not. I just want to mention two other singles that came out that where I found very interesting. The new Blackbriar single, Floriography, came out. Simply put, if you long for that old Within Temptation sound, this band has really taken the mantle and kind of pushed it forward. I am just not into Within Temptation the way I was, 10 or 15 years ago, but Blackbriar is kind of renewing my interest in that style because they do it so well. So that's a song to check out. And the new single, the second single from the upcoming Unrecorded album, the song is called The Antimatter. This is a one-man black metal project out of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I love their last album. This is very much in the same vein, just really well done symphonic black metal, but not to the point where it beats you over the head. I think it's just enough to make it interesting, and the vocals are rather good for black metal. So that is an album that I will be checking out when it is released. Unclear, I suppose, when that is coming out, but it's called A Pathway to the Moon, and I believe it comes out in January. So something to keep an eye on. And again, no shortage of new material from bands that are coming out. I want to transition to Gojira. This was a request from Dave Milburn, one of our listeners. I have to wonder, is this a band you had ever heard of prior to this, or is this like completely uncharted waters for you?
I feel like I've been aware of this band for a very long time. I just never really got around to listening to them. And like, I even completely missed the whole, Olympics performance. I haven't seen it. I just saw a lot of excitement and positivity towards a metal band being featured in such a way that was being seen by so many people, which is that kind of representation for our genre, especially in here in the US, where it's basically ignored in a lot of ways, at least in a mainstream sort of fashion. I thought that was a really big deal. But again, I just continued to be completely like in the dark about what this band sounds like. I mean, I always assumed that they were like a pretty heavy band, and that listening to this album definitely confirmed that assumption. But really, like, my knowledge, I don't think I had ever really like listened to one full song from this band up until the last week and a half.
It's interesting. I kind of had a similar experience, although I got into them just a little bit sooner than you. I checked out Fortitude, their most recent album, which at this point is almost 4 years old. It came out in 2021, and I rather enjoyed it. But I think what prevented me from listening to them for many, many years or even decades was that I thought that they were a new metal band, and I just didn't have enough knowledge. I just figured I was not going to like it because they had come out, or I guess we'll say they kind of got together in the early 2000s. And as a result, I just never thought that this was a style that I would enjoy. And I was corrected about 10 or 12 years ago by the singer from Ascendia when he's like, no, they're actually a prog band, and actually rather heavy. They don't sound like new metal at all. And with that in the back of my head, I decided to kind of listen to the new album, and I admittedly have not heard a ton of their stuff. And this was my first time hearing From Mars to Sirius, which is not only their third studio album, but widely regarded as one of, if not their best. This is an album that has simply gotten rave reviews over the years. And if you're into the style, I can certainly see why. It is a very heavy and kind of hit you over the head with their style. What they do differently from a lot of bands is that when they come up with a riff for one of their songs, boy, does that riff kind of carry through the whole song. I mean, like, there's a repetitiveness here, but where they kind of make their money or kind of change things up is with some of those unbelievable drum fills on this album. I thought the drumming was just simply outstanding. And I found it interesting that the band has been basically stayed together for the last 25 years, which is not something you hear that often, but the band is still together. They're a 4-piece. It's Joe Duplantier on vocals and rhythm guitar. It's Christian and Drew on lead guitar, Jean-Michel Labadier on bass, and Mario Duplantier on drums. So it's the two brothers and the two other gentlemen that join them. What's always kind of made me curious about this band is their live show. Everybody I know that has seen this band live has said that they are just absolutely fantastic. And I'm curious, if at the end of this, was there enough about this album that you like that you'd be interested or curious to see them live? But we'll get there.
Okay, we will.
Did you hear like the progginess there, or did you think it kind of lent itself more to another style?
I heard the progginess, but I think that it was kind of drowned out by the it was so just riffy. It was so like just heavy riffs and screaming. That was the way I described it. Just heavy riffs and screaming for 65 to 70 minutes, however long it was. I had a hard time deciphering from song to song. To me it was very samey. It's not my favorite kind of genre, this kind of like marriage of like technical death metal and prog metal. There were parts that I enjoyed, but like this is not my cup of tea. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be the case, and it also happens to be a very dense album. It clocks in at 66 minutes, almost 67 minutes. It is not short. And I think that you might have even liked it more if it was, 40 or 45 minutes, but they, no shortage of value to the purchaser on this one, because you're getting a really kind of a meaty album here. And, one of the things I'll say is it came out September 27th, 2005. So we're coming up on 20 years at this point. And it's an album that, like I said, just rave reviews throughout, and it's extreme, it's heavy, but then there's these like interludes or these certain passages which kind of bring it back down to earth. And I think it's when they really are striking, because they are kind of needed because of the heaviness and the repetitiveness of some of this stuff. But I'm going to take the liberty of putting into the record, if you will, what Dave had to say, because I thought that what he said was really interesting. He said, "I love artists that can get philosophical while maintaining a primal energy. And From Mars to Sirius delivers both poignant messages and crushing riffs. Gojira makes a more aggressive brand of activist music that speaks to my core like no tree-hugging hippie ever could. My very first introduction to the band was 1 year after the release of this album, during their very first U.S. tour opening for Children of Bodom." By the way, that had to be a really interesting tour, because what a conflict of styles, but somehow it would work. But I digress. I wasn't immediately sold, but they kept showing up in supporting slots for metal shows I attended over the years, and they won me over a little more each time. Their recent headlining performances are a must-see, and From Mars to Sirius produced a handful of live staples, such as The Heaviest Matter of the Universe and Flying Whales. My personal favorite is Backbone, or as frontman Joe Duplantier often introduces it at shows, back fucking bone. Easy 9 out of 10 for me. So obviously a fan, and I can certainly appreciate why this would take time, because the first time I listened to the album this week, I was not pleased. I said to myself, I don't know if I can do this, for day after day for a week, just because I was not in the headspace for it. It was a really stressful day at work, and I just was not into it that listen. But then there were other times this week where I actually thoroughly enjoyed the album, and it was really kind of dependent on my mood, which I know sounds kind of ridiculous, but like if I was in the right headspace for the album, I enjoyed it. And when I was having a bad day, or if there was some sort of stress that was kind of getting to me, I found it a very difficult to get through because of the density and because of the length of the thing. Did you have that experience, or was it pretty even keeled throughout the week for you?
No, it was definitely easier to listen to when I was like less anxious or stressed out. And like the first time I turned it on, I was like not having a good day, and like it really was not the right thing to turn on. I think I just turned it off and said like, all right, this is not the time to be listening to this. Power Quest, this was not. So yeah, I can understand that. Like this is definitely mood music, and I think that you know, I don't really like have a kind of mood where I'm like I need to listen to something that's just like super aggressive. Because I don't know, maybe it's just my meds, but I just don't really feel like I'm in that kind of headspace very often. So like,
probably a healthy thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. Like it's I can definitely understand the appeal of this kind of stuff, and like I'm very glad that we listened to it, because again, like I said, like my knowledge of this band, I don't think I ever assumed they were nu metal, because I felt like they kind of came out a little bit after that was all the rage, and I feel like that era of nu metal was a lot shorter than we remember it being. I think it felt like it was such a big deal, but I don't think it lasted all that long, like beyond like maybe 3 or 4 years. And I feel like this album in particular coming out in 2005, I feel like that kind of genre, I feel like bands like Papa Roach were already starting to like play the music they wanted to play in the first place, which was not nu metal. That was one of the funny things about them, I always found, is that they didn't want to be a nu metal band. They just figured it was their best shot at making a statement and getting noticed, and it totally worked. And then as soon as people figure out who they were, they're like, all right, now we're going to go play the music we wanted to play in the first place. I feel like this is probably around that time anyway. So like, this has like, in my opinion, no ties to nu metal at all. But I think it kind of, for never hearing the band, it kind of sounded exactly as I would have assumed that they sounded like, for whatever reason. And I don't know why. Like it just, usually my kind of preconceived notions are not really this spot on, but in this case it totally was. So, yeah, I again, like I can completely, understand the appeal here, but this, for me, the biggest issue for me with an album like this is going to be the lack of melodicness. And that's why I really gravitate towards melodic death metal, when it's bands like, Scar Symmetry and Soilwork and even, or if we want to talk about like Children of Bodom, like there's just, the more keyboards and more melodies and stuff like that can kind of make the heavy riffs and the screaming a lot more palatable. And in this case, like it didn't have that to offset that part of it for me. So I am hoping that you will provide a little bit more, feedback, at least positive feedback from song to song. Cause I mean, to be honest, like a lot of this just sounded kind of the same to me. It was just very like mid tempo, just heavy, riffy, heavy drums, heavy riffs, heavy vocals, like all the way through for the most part.
Yeah, well, let's dive into the first track, Ocean Planet. And it's interesting because for me, this is one of the worst songs on the album, and I thought it was an odd way to start. It's kind of slow, very sludgy, and just too much of like that whammy bar thing going on over and over again. It was kind of just beat you down a little bit. The verses are a little bit boring in my opinion. The riff actually doesn't save them. And the drums in certain spots remind me of almost like gunshots going off in succession, which was like a really trippy kind of sound. I think the instrumental breakdown's a little bit better. Actually, probably the highlight of the song for me. The bridge is very heavy, but the blast beats are just a little bit too much, I think. And it's funny because it's like it reminds me of something you would have heard off Devin Townsend's Ocean Machine album, if you've ever heard that album, but it's just not as good as that album. The good news, though, is that this album, I do think, gets quite a bit better, especially as you get towards the middle of the album. But the opening track, I was not a fan of, and I never really got into it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really find that like I'm going to be interested to hear like what made the other tracks seem different to you or better to you than this one, because I feel like this kind of set the stage for where my head was at for the entire album, pretty much. And I'll be honest with you, I want probably the biggest struggle for me is the vocals, because if you're gonna, for me, if an album is gonna be like really focused on heaviness and just heavy riffs and heavy drums, like I'd mentioned earlier, I would probably prefer if the vocals were clean, because then that way that it balances out a little bit better for me. Like when everything is just like so in your face, like the guitars and the drums and the vocals, and then there's not as much melody and there's not any keyboards, and like it's just, that's where my personal tastes kind of come in and kind of make it hard for me to enjoy this as much as I probably would have if like the vocals were a little bit more pleasing to my ears on a personal level. Like even a Devin Townsend, I feel like I like enjoy his vocals, even though I think kind of are fairly similar to this, not very, but I feel like if this was Devin singing, like I think I might have been a little bit easier to take in for me. So again, that could be it too. I mean, that's always been kind of my issue too with Sleep Token, is that like I just really don't enjoy the vocalist, and I feel like the band, I think I would enjoy a lot more if I enjoyed the vocalist. But that sometimes it's really hard to get past. If you don't like vocals, it's kind of like, at least for me, it's kind of like a DOA situation.
I get it. It's hard to appreciate or enjoy the rest if the vocals, which are always, up front and center, are not something that clicks. I think that the second track, Backbone's a little bit better tuned. Again, not one of my favorites, although I know that Dave's obviously a fan of this one. It's his favorite track. This has this galloping guitar riff at the beginning, and the drumming on this track is just outstanding. The vocals are heavier, and I actually think it lends itself well to the music. But I think what you're struggling is it's prog without keyboards, and I think that might be part of the problem for you. The riffs here are so heavy. It reminds me of something that you would hear from like Orbit Culture or one of those bands, where they're just so intense with the riffs. And some of these screams, like these guttural screams from the singer, are just super intense. I would put this kind of in the middle of the road for me. Not as poor as the opening track, but there are better tracks for my taste on the album.
I'll be honest, like I had a hard time choosing a song of the week. So I think, because it was Dave's favorite song, I'm going to choose this. So that way we have a chance to hear some of it. I would feel better if like we chose a song that was like, chosen by somebody who's a big fan of the album. And so I think so I think that's where I'm going to defer to Dave on this. I hope you don't feel like I'm bailing on my duties here, but I just don't know that I felt like anything really. I don't know that anything was like awful for me, but I don't think anything like it was just really like a straight line for me. And so nothing really stood out. As far as like liking it a little bit more than anything else. So I'm gonna take the easy way out and let our requester pick the song of the week in so many words. So here's Backbone.
So we move on to the third track, From the Sky. And this is, I think, still a little more upbeat than the first two tracks even, with a really solid low end. But again, you get that really repetitive riff. And it's kind of interesting, like sonically, because I hear them like almost sliding across the guitar strings, which I thought was just kind of a cool effect that you don't always hear. The double bass drum is a force in a lot of sections of this song. And it's hard for me to even articulate why, but it's probably my favorite of the first three. So it's like we're getting better and better as we go along here. The drum fills, again, absolutely outstanding. And if I had to describe this song in a word, I'd probably use a similar word throughout, and that is intense. Everything about this song is intense. And it just kind of picking up steam before we get to this next track, which is almost a come down tune in Unicorn. But any particular thoughts on From the Sky?
I thought this one was a little bit similar to the previous track as far as like the tempo goes and just the general heaviness of it. But I'm kind of on the same page with you on this one. I will say, like, I thought the riffs all throughout the album were really, really killer and just super, super heavy, like even like heavier than you would hear from like, the big thrash bands even. Like, it's just really impactful. I thought Orbit Culture was a really good comparison because they're like that. They kind of also give me that wall of sound heaviness vibe as well, like kind of in the, in the same vein as this. So yeah, I'm with you on this. Like I'm begging for like some chill prog though at this point. Like I'm already like getting a little like beaten over the head with the aggressiveness of all this. So like I'm ready. I feel like I was ready for a reprieve that just wouldn't come.
Well, you get it with Unicorn. It's a track that's a little bit over 2 minutes. It's an instrumental tune. And believe it or not, for me, it was almost like listening to Pure Reason Revolution. It was this like spacey prog rock thing that they had going on. And normally these types of tracks can be a bit of a throwaway. But the album needs something like this because of the repetitive nature of the rest of the album in terms of the style and just that wall of sound, like you mentioned. So I thought Unicorn was a nice kind of reprieve, or that kind of come down before Where Dragons Dwell, which is a slower tune, almost doom-like at the start of this thing. Reminds me of a band called Crypt Sermon, which came out with an album earlier this year, which I rather enjoyed, one of the better doom metal albums from this year. But then the song itself gets faster, and I enjoy that contrast between the slow and the heavy and then the faster stuff. Solid verses. I think the vocals, again, fit the riff very, very nicely on Where Dragons Dwell. And I love how some of the instrumental sections in this song slow down, and then you get kind of this instrumental breakdown and extended bridge, which takes the song out. This was one of my 3 or 4 favorite songs on the album. And as you can see, I seem to be liking this album more and more as I get into it. I think at the end we hit a little bit of a wall, but for me, Unicorn into Where Dragons Dwell is the best thing I've heard so far.
Yeah, Unicorn was a much needed break from like just this onslaught, and I appreciated that. But then it was like right back to business with the next track. Like, okay, just in case you forgot, we're still heavy as hell. So yeah, this is one of those ones where I think even more so than the previous tracks, those freaking like double bass drums are just so intense. Like it's you mentioned like gunshots, like that's really what it reminds me of here as well. Just like, like, man, I think onslaught might be the word of the day. Hashtag onslaught, because this is just another one of those songs. But you're right though. It's nice that they kind of take these. I wish they did more of these little like kind of proggy like little breaks within the song to just kind of break up some of it. In a weird way, I'm going to make the weirdest comparison, but there used to be this show called Man vs. Food, and I'll never forget one of the food challenges Adam Richman had was there was this ice cream sundae called the kitchen sink, and it was this just enormous ice cream sundae. It had like brownies in it, like anything you could throw in an ice cream sundae. And he made it about halfway through, and he was struggling, and he asked them to bring a plate of French fries because he needed something kind of salty to like break up all of the sweetness. And that's kind of what I feel like I need more of on this album is I need some French fries, or maybe it should be the other way around. Maybe I need some ice cream to break up all the saltiness. But like, that's kind of, don't ask me, this is where my brain goes sometimes.
Well, we're talking about French fries, French prog metal bands. I mean, it all comes together. But,
yeah, there you go. I'd take a loaf of French bread if you're offering
or French toast for that matter.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We get to the heaviest matter of the universe, a song that speeds things up quite a bit. The low end on this thing is pulverizing. It reminds me a lot of Strapping Young Lad and the album that we covered by them in the archives. I even thought the vocal delivery here was very Devin Townsend inspired. Not exactly different from the other songs, but I do think this is another one of the better tunes on the album. The bridge with the clean vocals was really refreshing to hear because I actually enjoy the cleans quite a bit. And again, the album is just picking up steam for me as we get into Flying Whales, which I'll speak about in a second. But the Heaviest Matter of the Universe is one of those songs that they still play live. So obviously one of the ones that's held in high regard.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of went for. There's not a lot of those like really guttural death vocals. It's really like kind of more of like the almost like kind of scratchy death vocals on most of the album. There's some real guttural growls on this one, but you know, again, like I'm having a hard time like differentiating song to song. It's just I'm just getting so beaten over the head by screaming vocals and heavy riffs and just like that onslaught of drumming that like it's just I'm just kind of like floating in this, just like my score is literally like just a flat line from start to finish. Like there's no drop, there's no raise. Like it's just, this is like, I'll say if nothing else, it's a very consistent album for me.
There you go. I get it. That kind of concludes the first half, and then we pick up with side B with Flying Whales. I love how this song starts. It's really slow, and it's kind of an ode to the intelligence of the whale, which, by the way, I should mention, this entire album is kind of an address of the various environmental issues such as climate change that are impacting marine life. So, obviously these guys are intelligent guys that are kind of in tune with, you know, the world and what's going on in it. But I thought that Flying Whales was really particularly interesting. This song doesn't remind me of Devin. It reminds me of the band The Ocean, ironically enough. It's got a post-metal vibe to it. It's just got some really cool grooves and sound effects and some fantastic bass lines that really jumped out on this song. I would argue that this is probably the best intro to a track on the album, and it just happens to be an extended intro. And then kind of the song picks up around the 2:30 mark, where it gets really dark and really heavy. The verses aren't that fast, but they're in your face. Again, another simple but powerful riff, and the chorus with those double bass drums are really freaking heavy. It's used well here because it doesn't take over the song. It doesn't kind of overstay its welcome, but the double bass drum, when it's used in its simplicity on this track, is awesome. This is my song of the week. I love this song. I look forward to hearing it every time. I want to give it a listen, and then I want to come back and hear all of your thoughts on Flying Whales. I can't believe my eyes, but it's true. So that was Flying Whales. Again, I have a lot of good things to say. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, like the album's getting a lot better for me. And I think that I've kind of almost liked each track more than the last at this point. Any thoughts on this one?
I thought the beginning of the song reminded me a lot of Alice in Chains, like one of the way that Alice in Chains would kind of come in with just a very kind of like this almost mopey kind of like just slow and kind of deliberate kind of intro, very like the proggy end of Alice in Chains, and then like you said, the song just kind of explodes. I mean, nothing I'm going to say is really going to be new or different from anything I said before. So I'll take it. I'll just read some of the positive things about the song that I saw on Wikipedia. Loudwire included the song on their list of the 66 best metal songs of the 21st century. Graham Hartman said it utilized, quote, one of the best riffs and breakdowns of the century, unquote, adding that the song, quote, becomes more iconic as the years pass, stretching the limits of what a metal band can achieve without clean vocals or flashy guitar solos, unquote. And Rolling Stone included the song in their list of the 100 greatest heavy metal songs, ranking it number 70. So this is a well-received tune, without a doubt, in the metal community. I would probably put it on my upper end of the straight line that I've been on.
That's fair. That's fair. The fact that it stands out a little bit is definitely a good thing.
Yeah, and I can understand why it probably is, considered one of the better songs in the album. It seems like, at least based on some of these lists and what have you.
Yeah, well said, well said. And we move to In the Wilderness. This kind of in the similar vein as the last song, but just faster, arguably even heavier. And it's got this like Pantera meets Meshuggah vibe going on, which is interesting in two bands that I don't know that I would have ever put together, but that's what it sounds like. And the drums, just insane. And I think that the band's technical proficiency is on full display with this track. The analogy I would use is think of a Soen tune, but on steroids. And that's what kind of a song like this is. And the second half is really just an instrumental and proggy section to the song that hits the listener hard. This is a song that is a quintessential example of when I was in the mood for the album, it hit me. And there were times where this was a complete miss. It was like hit or miss depending on my mood.
I enjoyed some of these riffs towards the back end of the song, but honestly, like some of these tracks that are like, going over like 6 minutes, it almost feels like it doesn't need to be as long as it is. And in all honesty, like the album itself, I feel like if they condensed this to 45 minutes or so, like I might have had an easier time digesting it all. Definitely. But man, it is. What's the word we use? Dense. This is a dense ass album.
Yeah, no argument from me. I get it. There's a fatigue, I think, because of the intense nature of this thing. But World to Come is the next track, and it stands out in many ways because the guitar sound at the beginning has like this Rush meets Soundgarden vibe, which is really interesting. I really enjoy the intro to this. This is probably my second favorite tune and was nearly my song of the week. It's repetitive, but for some reason it never bothers me on this song because there was enough nuance throughout where it kind of stayed fresh. And even though the riff is repetitive, it changes just a touch throughout. And the drum patterns kind of keep this thing alive. I like this song a lot. It's definitely one of the better songs on the album.
When Spoon Man meets Working Man.
Exactly.
I actually like where they were kind of heading with this. Like there's a little bit more of a cleaner vocal going on. It's a little bit more of a deliberate song. It's another long one at almost 7 minutes, but yeah, this one's a little, I think this one stands out just because it's not as beat you over the head, as a lot of the other tracks were. And I think it comes at a time where I think it's, kind of needed. Although it is, followed by another kind of a segue tune that I think is also kind of mellow in comparison to everything else, at this point. But I think that these 2 tracks kind of make for a little bit of a break from just the onslaught, as I mentioned earlier, as the word of the week. So yeah, I kind of I dug this one a little bit more so than some of the other stuff. So I will I'll give credit where credit is due on that one, and I think again well placed, because I think we needed a little bit of a break from all of the heaviness at this point.
Yeah, and From Mars, this interlude track is very guitar laden. It has like these layers of guitar and also these vocals, which are kind of calmer, much more low key, and even layered vocals. So you got layers of guitar on layers of vocals. And it's interesting because it's really From Mars is an intro to Sirius, where the song picks up where the riff is the same. It's just 1,000 times heavier on the back end. So it's a kind of a cool use of titles where they took the entire title of the album and broke it down into 2 songs. The song itself, not particularly special to me. It's I didn't find it offensive in any way, but nothing really about To Sirius stands out. It's just well placed on the album because it's on the back end and kind of buried before Global Warning, the final track. That's an interesting tune, though. The final track here, Global Warning, is very atmospheric. The riff is almost directly from something you'd hear from Coheed and Cambria in many ways. Again, with the Rush influence there too. It's reminiscent in many ways of their newer material. It's a good way to close the album out. I love the clean vocals here and the bass lines during the verses. Just absolutely top-notch stuff. And then as the song kind of progresses, so does the angst in the vocals, which I thought is kind of cool. And then it mellows out a bit towards the end. Interesting, because as they kind of talk about Global Warning, where, you know, it's kind of a play on global warming, I can understand why there's angst and anxiety. So it's actually like from an academic pursuit, a really interesting way to end the album.
Yeah, I mean, just cutting back to Too Serious, a funny thing about it is that riff that goes like dun dun dun. I kept hearing Stradivarius, like either Uncertainty or Visions, so one or the other. Like, just kind of all the bands to pop into my head, it's almost as random as the Man vs. Food reference, but that was kind of for whatever reason I was like, oh my god, there's something I can kind of compare to like a power metal tune. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that in there. But yeah, I actually kind of liked Global Warming as that exit song, if you will. You know, it's almost 8 minutes long, but I like that the guitar riffs are a little bit more technical and less just like crunchy and beat you over the head. It's a little bit more of a proggy kind of vibe. So this actually was one of my more preferred songs on the album, believe it or not, and I thought it was a kind of a solid way to wrap things up.
Nice. I'm glad, and I like I said, not every song was a hit for me, but there was enough here that I actually did enjoy the album quite a bit. I'll even take the lead on this one. You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's tough for me to rate this one because there were times where I was like really into it and there were times where I couldn't listen to it. So it's kind of an odd mix. I'm going to give it a 6.5. I'll say that when I really liked the album, it was higher than that. And there were times, like I said, where I couldn't even listen to it. So I couldn't rate it much higher than that, but it's a 6.5 for me with upside, if that makes sense. Like I will go back to this when I'm in the right headspace, and I have a feeling I'll enjoy the hell out of it even more than I did this week. I'm curious for you, if it's flatlined throughout, does that mean it gets a 5, or are you somewhere else with this thing?
Well, I will point out, I wish I had known there's a Japanese bonus track of the band covering Metallica's Escape.
It's an awesome cover, by the way.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. I wish if I had known, I would have listened to it ahead of time. So that's really cool. I don't know that it would have affected my score in any significant sort of way, but yeah, I'm like just slightly below that 5.0 kind of average. I'm going to go with a 4.75. Like, I don't think that anything about this album was necessarily bad. It's just that like it really was. Yeah. And it was just kind of like samey, like all the way through. Like, I really wanted there to be some things that kind of picked up, and there just wasn't enough of them. So like, that's kind of where I'm at. I hope I don't disappoint Dave too much, but I'm glad. I appreciate the challenge, if nothing else, of listening to something that I really consider. This is, for me, like one of the most outside of my comfort zone albums that I think we've listened to in our 230 plus episodes. So I will say that, but I wouldn't put it in the unlistenable category. It was just challenging for me. I'll say that.
Well, I totally understand that. I'm glad we got to choose it, or I'm glad, I'm glad it was picked, because I don't know that we would have covered it otherwise. And I'd be curious to know if you like some of the new stuff even better, just because it's a little more accessible, but still staying true to their roots and their sound. So there you have it. From Mars to Sirius, from Gojira. Thanks again for the request. We really appreciate it. I am very curious. I feel like it's been a while since you've picked an album, so I'm very curious about what you're going to choose. But I just want to mention a couple of news-related items. Dave Mustaine has said that Megadeth is in the studio or about to enter the studio writing and recording their next album. So that's going to be interesting. By way of reference, Kiko Loureiro gone. The rest of the band is intact. Curious to see where that goes in the coming days and coming weeks.
Who does his replacement end up being?
I believe it was.
Is it set in stone,
Timo
or
Matsuyasari, a Finnish guitar player? So I don't know. Okay. I think he toured with them, and then now he's going to be on the album. But no idea what this album is going to sound like. But always curious to hear stuff from the Megadeth camp. And then Sabotage announcing more spring and summer European festival appearances. I think they're up to 5 in total. Is it too much to ask for a U.S. warm-up show? Because I will go anywhere to see that. But, we'll see what happens. But I'm happy to see them touring.
It seemed like it was just going to be that one show, and now it's like there's, I think, are there 4 or 5 now?
5 at this point.
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to be incredibly shocked if we don't see, even if it means that it's the incarnation that they've announced. I would be shocked if we don't see something pop up here in the
I have to see it.
U.S. And frankly, the timing I think is going to be just right for, I don't know, September 2026 for. I don't know. Maybe Atlanta. I feel like that's a good city. Might be the place. And with any luck, John will be feeling up to joining the band at that point. So, just saying. I've been crossing my fingers on that one for a long time.
You and me both. And finally, Avantasia is announced their new album, Here Be Dragons, which is coming out next year. Always fun to hear stuff from the Avantasia camp. That is a first day must listen, obviously. And we'll enjoy that in 2025. No real expectations, no real information other than it's going to be an album that comes out next year, and it looks like it's going to have 10 tracks. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, always excited to see what they come up with, who's going to be involved, et cetera, et cetera. Before I reveal my album next week, I do want to just once again point you to our Blue Sky account. I've been trying to kind of add a little bit more posts that maybe we don't see on other platforms, including a video that Halloween posted from their upcoming Live at Budokan Blu-ray video clip of Save Us. I'm really kind of enjoying the responses that we're getting from posts that I was not seeing on Threads or even Twitter for the longest time. So I'm hoping that this is a good spot for us. Our friends from MSR Cast and Sean the Metal Pigeon both have joined as well, and I plug their both of them. So come join us. I think our presence on Twitter and Threads is probably going to be kind of minimal going forward. So stick to Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky for all things Metal Exchange.
Well said. And thanks to our Patreon members. You, as I always say, are the lifeblood of the show. We appreciate you. Give us a like and a follow. That always helps others find the show. And what am I listening to next week?
You know what? This was something I had planned, and then a bunch of our Patreon members just started talking about it, and so it just seemed only the timing was perfect. It's actually kind of going to be close to the album's anniversary date of December 4th, 2020, but we're going to talk about a band that we have not talked about yet in full, or do a complete episode on, and that's Majestica, formerly known as Rainseed. And it's time to get into the holiday spirit. We're going to listen to A Christmas Carol.
That's so funny.
Tommy Johansson's version of the classic Charles Dickens, Christmas story. The main reason why I chose this, but even before our guys on the Patreon started talking about it, is because I never really listened to this album as much as you would think I would have, being such a huge fan of this band, and mostly it's because my window for listening to Christmas music is usually so short that I probably listened to it like once or twice when it came out, and so I really wanted to be able to spend some time with this, and it felt good too. The timing felt good too, because we hadn't really done anything from Majestica or Rainseed yet, and with the band, playing at 70,000 Tons and Prague Power next year, I wanted to do something from them, but it was December, and it just seemed like the timing was good, and frankly, I needed kind of a upbeat palate cleanser from the Gojira album, so this is going to be my Christmas gift to you and all of the fans of the Metal Exchange.
This definitely checks off the boxes, a lot of boxes, and it's the best time of year to do something like this. So good choice. I look forward to it. We will see you next week when we come back and talk all things Majestica and get in the Christmas spirit here at the Metal Exchange. Chris?
Yeah, I am going to just hope that your ears are not ringing still by the time we do this episode.
I have major concerns. I think I'm bringing 2 pairs of earplugs, but such is life and such is a Manowar concert. Enjoy the week, my friend. I will catch up with you soon, and we'll come back next week and talk all things Majestica.
Sounds good, my friend.